All right. And if you are seeing this, then that's a good sign. And that means that all of the connections are connected and you are here in the right place. Hi, Kim. I'm so glad that you're here on Crowdcast. And in about a minute, our friends on Facebook Live will be following. And if you're following on YouTube Live, then hi to you as well. And I wanted to just go ahead and put this out there right at the very beginning that if you're watching on YouTube Live, then I've posted in the Facebook comments, but if you're watching on YouTube Live and you want to actually interact and comment and ask our guest today questions, then you might want to jump over to the Crowdcast platform so that you can ask those questions. Otherwise, totally cool. You can watch and enjoy and whatever, and I'll try to answer your questions later if I see them on the other platforms. So let's go ahead and get started. We've got 19, 18, 17. Welcome to Association Chat, your weekly online discussion for the association community where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join in this online home for the community. I'm the host of Association Chat, Kiki L'Italienne, and if you have been paying attention to what's been going on with the chat this week, this is our third live interview this week, and we are making up for missing next week when here in the United States, we celebrate Independence Day. Hey, Anne, great to see you. So today we're talking about experiential design. And before we jump into that, I wanted to share with you the difference. I had to look this up myself to make sure that we were clear. The difference between experience design and experiential design. They're related, but they have some subtle differences. Wikipedia says experience design is the practice of designing products, processes, services, events, omni-channel journeys, and environments with a focus placed on quality of user experience and culturally relevant solutions. But experiential design tends to focus on building a temporary or permanent environment specifically for conveying a message, establishing a brand, or arousing feelings and engaging the senses. So you can see this is all about experience, but it's just kind of, it's nuanced. So ASAE debuted a new conference called XDP, or Experience Design Project, for meeting planners 2 years ago. And I had the honor of being one of 5 primary speakers for that very unique and inspiring event. But here's the question: experience design and experiential design. Hey, Vivian, great to see you on Facebook. Why is this so important? It's got everyone's focus, it's got everyone's attention, but how can we bring meaningful experience to our members, to our attendees, and why is experiential design important to know about anyway? So today's guest is going to help us answer those questions. Nancy Belmont is an artist, entrepreneur, and team building leadership guide whose interactive art installations have reached millions. Her artwork has not just inspired those who are in person to witness it, but her work's even gone viral courtesy of Upworthy and being featured on everything from the Today Show, Al Jazeera, ABC. Even the former First Lady Michelle Obama tweeted about her good work. That is amazing. And actually, you guys, I invited Nancy to talk with us today to share her experience and insights with us because she really is amazing. I had the good fortune to actually meet with her, and I can attest, creative spirit, super smart. So we're in for a real treat. Thank you, Nancy, for joining us today on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kiki. It's really fun to be here.
I am so excited. So I wanted to talk a little bit about when you first recognized that your art could bring people together. You know, it's to say the word experiential design or interactive art installation or something like these are big words. But when did that connection really click for you?
You know, I think I've always been about community, and I don't really even consider myself an artist. I consider myself a leadership coach and someone who is trying to help people bring consciousness into their lives. And what I've found is that art is a great way to just open people up to that teaching. And so I'm always about community. I think that when we learn in community with each other, something magical happens. We start to realize that we're not alone in this experience of what it is to be human. And we start having conversations that feel like going from I'm all alone in the way that I think to, oh my gosh, I'm normal and other people think the way I do. They're having the same life experience that I have, and maybe I'm okay.
So I think that the work that you've done has definitely shown everyone, I think, insight into what you just shared with us. I think that when people walk away from it, at least from what I've heard and what I've read about, they walk away with it with this sense of unity and connection. What are some of the projects that you've put together, and maybe share with other people who haven't read up on you and heard these stories? What are some of the projects that you've done in the past that have brought these communities and people together?
My very first project was called the Courage Wall, and it was this huge chalkboard that said, I wish I had the courage to, ... And people would write what they wish they had the courage to do. And it was everything from kids saying, I wish I had the courage to jump off the diving board, to a mother saying, I wish I had the courage to forgive my daughter for her drug addiction.
Wow.
To a hoarder who was engaged and said, I wish I had the courage to bring my fiance to my apartment.
Wow.
So, you know, the things that people wrote were really true and deep. You know, there was a woman who said, I wish I had the courage to check into a shelter. I wish I had the courage to believe I'm enough. So, you know, when you see all of this up there in colorful chalk, you think, wow, I wish I had the courage to do that too. Or that doesn't seem so hard. Why would that be so hard for her? And maybe my things aren't as hard as I think they are either. So that was my first project. And, you know, I didn't expect it to go anywhere. I thought it was just going to be this community project that was kind of fun. And then, you know, the Post covered it, the Today Show covered it, Al Jazeera covered it. And pretty soon I had people from all over the world saying what it meant to them, saying how grateful they were that we could start to talk about our fears and normalize the conversation on fear, that maybe fear is part of what it is to be human. Maybe it's okay that I'm afraid. And maybe the key is how I interact with that fear. Mm-hmm. So that was the first project. The second project was called Unity. And this one spread all around the world thanks to a video that went out on Upworthy. And it was really in response to this rhetoric that we're all so divided, that there's nothing that that ties us together if we have different political views, if we come from different places. So I wanted to show physically that we're actually interconnected. So it was 32 poles arranged in a circle. Mm-hmm. Each of the poles had an identifier, like I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I speak English as a second language, I'm a survivor. And people would wrap pink yarn around all the poles that they identified with. And you started to see this web of interconnectivity that showed that no matter how different we feel like we are, there's always this common ground. And I wanted to show that if we started the conversation from that common ground, that we could have a much more productive dialogue.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, a lot of kids, schools did it, universities did it, activists did it at festivals. People are starting to do it at conferences. So it's a really neat way of, you know, you're bumping into each other, you're kind of getting intertwined with other people. And it's a nice way of breaking the ice, mm-hmm. of, you know, sharing something about yourself without being too vulnerable.
So, and I know I wanted you to maybe mention too, this most recent one, because like I'm planning on bringing my daughter and my husband out because, like before it all goes up, like, I mean, it's up, but you know what I mean? Like up in flames.
Yeah.
So
literally up in flames,
like literally up in flames. So, I'm trying to figure out like the best time to go out there, because I want to have time to go through and participate and then be there for that. But for those who are watching who don't know what I'm talking about at all, can you explain maybe the latest project that you've just done?
Yeah, so the new project is called The Sanctuary, mm-hmm. and it's all about our inner critic. So that negative voice that chats in our ear and says mean things about ourselves to ourselves, or says, you can't do that, who do you think you are? And so we're getting rid of that voice. We're writing it on a piece of paper, throwing it away. And then Saturday at 2:00, we're burning all those. So we're having a burning ceremony. So when you set up in flames, it's going up in flames.
It is. It's going up in flames. Yes.
And then we craft a positive mantra that we put on this disc. And so the positive mantra can be anything like, I am good enough. I am strong. I am brave. I am the light. So people are writing all of these beautiful positive mantras, present tense mantras that they can use to start retraining their brain and actually start to reprogram the neural pathways from I'm stupid to I work really hard, to I'm creative, to I'm worthy. And all of these are hanging out in a field, and you can walk around and experience what it is to have those kinds of thoughts around you all the time.
So, I want to talk a little bit about the other work that you do too, because you mentioned it earlier. You don't consider yourself an artist, which I think is bizarre because you create these beautiful art installations, the vision for how these things are going to turn out, the impact that they have. I mean, artist seems to be the fitting word. But you do all of these other things that tie into that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the other aspects of, like your career, your profession, and how they maybe intertwine?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to sum it all up is that I work with people and organizations on identity. Mm-hmm. So who am I? What do I stand for? How do I show up in the world? A lot of people don't know those answers to those questions, and a lot of organizations don't know that. And until we can really answer those questions, what are my values? What is the story that I'm living out in the world? What gives me meaning and motivation? Until we can answer those questions as an individual or as a team, it's really hard to live into our greatest selves. So that's what I help people do. I work one-on-one as a leadership coach. I have workshops where people can come together and answer these questions in community with each other. I'll do that with organizations. I do a lot of work with transitioning veterans in that space. Mm-hmm. They've had an identity for so long, and then when they retire or when they leave the service, then they're not really sure who they are and how they can express themselves in the world. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with midlife. I think midlife seekers is what I call them. So these, people who are in a transition of some sort. It could be they're empty nesting. It could be that they're a new parent. It could be they're going through a divorce, a career change. So all of these moments of transition are great moments for us to take stock of who we are, redefine ourselves if we feel like that's appropriate, and really step into authoring our own lives.
I love this too. I see Anne wrote over here. I love this. I love it too. And Rich, yes, I'm so glad that you guys are on here. So, when you go in and begin to work on a concept, say someone like Anne, or, a meeting planner, or somebody reached out to you and said, we want to do something like this. But maybe the projects that you've created before are not exact. They want something unique to their own conference or their own experience. What's the creative process for that? How do you work with people like that?
Well, I always believe in the saying, begin with the end in mind. So we would start to say, what is the one thing that you want to have your people feel, know, do? What is the one thing? So, all of my workshop or all of my projects have a single idea that they're trying to convey. So think about that first. What is it that you want your participants to do, know, feel? And then we start crafting an experience around that. Everything I do has to be that people have some sort of vulnerability, right? But it's like this anonymous vulnerability in a way. They get to choose how much they want to associate what they wrote with how vulnerable they are. So that's something I always have in mind. I think people love to share, but sometimes it's awkward to share. Yeah. So what I would do is understand what the outcome is that the organization wants to have. I would get an understanding of who their members are and, what the culture is related to that organization. And then is there something that we need to address? Like, is there a big change that needs to happen in the organization or in the industry? the courage wall is actually great for that, because if we have to make major changes, what do we need the courage to do in order to take the industry to the next level? So it may not be the courage wall. There may be another type of experience. Another thing to consider is the environment that it's going to be in. So are we inside in a ballroom? Are we outside? Do the materials need to weather? How long will the exhibit be? How many people will there be? Most of my exhibits are, they have about 2,000 to 4,000 participants. Mm-hmm. If we have fewer than that, then we just have to make sure that the installation is at a scale where it still looks really interesting and cool and draws people in.
I love that. I mean, this is such helpful information. And Anne says, I really like the courage wall. So she loves that idea. I do too. I think it's just absolutely phenomenal. And I think that this is the sort of thing that I hear people talking about in the association and meetings industries all the time, trying to figure out how to do it. But we have to move beyond, I think, the words or the ideas that the experience is switching up the diet that we have while we're there, and actually creating something that's meaningful for people that they'll not forget, that they'll think is a true experience that makes that event or that meeting unique. Do you ever face resistance or people who are pushing back on what you do on these projects? And if so, what does that look like?
There are people who come and they'll say, oh, I don't want to do it, because they're there at the project and maybe it's a teenage son, or maybe it's a spouse, and the spouse is really interested and the other partner is like, oh, I don't want to do it. And then they start walking around and experiencing it. And then they come back to the table and they're like, okay, I want to do it. I'm going to do it now. And it's great, because I think, again, it's normalizing that we are all human beings. Mm-hmm. We all have emotions, whether we want to admit it or not. It feels good to be vulnerable and to share and be part of this bigger community. And that's what I think is so cool about this work for associations is, when you're putting on a conference or an event, part of that is getting people to know each other and connect with each other in a way that is deeper than superficial. And when you can connect each other in a way that is really meaningful and you're going through this life experience together, that's how the connections last. That's how they grow deeper. And that's when the real work can get done, right? Because when we start to trust each other and know each other as human beings, then we can start to work together and do great things.
I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think this work is really important at conferences. I see so many people when I go to conferences and they're just kind of sitting around the table and they're nervous and they don't know if they should talk with each other. And this just gets people out of their shell. And then there's a talking point for later on, hey, when you sit down at the new table, say what you wish you had the courage to do. What do you think we need the courage to do as an industry?
Yeah. So since you started this, and I didn't have this as like a planned question, but I can't help but be curious about it. Since you started this, what have you learned? Since you started creating these, what have you learned? How do you think it's transformed who you are today? Sorry, that's pretty heavy.
It's a great question. I'm just trying to figure out if I can answer without being emotional, because one of the things I wrote on the courage wall was, I wish I had the courage to believe I am enough. And so many people have this thought that maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I'm not enough to be loved. Maybe I'm not enough to be successful. Maybe I'm not enough to be a good mom. And I think that's one thing that has completely transformed me. I started working on that question. How can I start to believe I'm enough? And then one day I was just walking down the street and it hit me. I was like, I'm here. There's a reason I'm still here. And the world needs this, and it needs the gifts that I have to offer, and I better do it. And, the projects have helped me see how people love it when you shine your light and share that with the world. Even if it's something that no one's ever done before, they're like, wow, you're so creative and different. And I've never seen anything like this before. And that can be a scary place to step into if you're not sure of yourself. So it's just given me a lot of confidence to know that I have something special to offer the world. And each one of these projects, now there are 5, each one of these has taken off in its own little way. And I know it's impacted people. I know it's changed people's lives. And I feel amazing for that.
Well, so I feel amazing that we get to be talking about that. And I'm so glad I asked this question. Actually, there is a wonderful question here on the chat wall from Adrian Seeger. Adrian Seeger, meet Nancy Belmont. You two are definitely destined to have some conversations because Adrian, Nancy, and he explains it here, but he's also a good friend of mine that we've known each other for years, and phenomenal. His focus, that the concept behind unconferences and things like that. He is all about the being in the moment, involved, present to enhance learning. And so he's a meeting designer and facilitator who focuses on creating meetings that become what they want and need them to be. Nancy, your work seems to be about creating meaningful experiences, environments that form a focal point for people to connect around. Can you say something about how our approaches intersect, if they do? It's a good question. And Adrian, I wish you could jump on like right now. And you guys, I have a feeling if you two actually connected on ways to work together, that could be, the whole world may not be ready for that.
Oh, they're ready. We'll make them ready.
They're ready. Yes.
So, what I try to do is create these spiritual places in secular spaces. And that is about being present. It's about connecting with a piece of yourself that maybe has been dormant for a while. It's about reflection. So, and what I love about my projects is that they're just on the street and, you're walking to brunch or you're walking to pick up a couple things and you happen upon this moment that you weren't expecting. And so many of us don't make time for reflection in our real lives. and it's this unexpected period for reflection that I think catches people off guard, but in a really good way. Yeah. So Adrian, I agree that we are both about being present, having experiences, creating memories, creating these moments that get into people's bodies. All of my projects have something where you're doing something physically, because I think when you get it into your body, it has a longer tail, right? It stays with you a little bit longer. And, so that's what I do. So I would love to talk with you, Adrian.
That's excellent. So I'm sure your work has changed lives. We've talked about it. Oh, wait. Okay. He says, yes, body involvement, so important. Love the idea of creating connection, reflection in an unexpected, wider environment. Wish I could join you, but have a client meeting in a few minutes. Oh, I promise you guys, I will make sure that I will send an introduction through email so you guys can connect. Because I think that, who knows? Really excellent stuff could happen from that. I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but you guys should talk. And Lola, Michael, Vivian over on Facebook Live, I see you over there. And hi guys. What I was going to say is that I imagine that people contact you and tell you about the impact that your art installations, that these interactive art installations have had on them. Do they? I don't know. I'm assuming that you probably do hear stories about that. What are maybe some of the stories or reflections that people have shared with you about the impact that this work has had?
Yeah, so that's what's really neat about me being able to do these projects in the same space every time, is that people will come back and they'll say, oh, I just loved, this project and it's made this kind of impact. So I had this family come and say, my son wrote, I wish I had the courage to audition for the play. And he was not going to audition for the play. He ended up auditioning after he wrote that on the Courage Wall, and he got the lead in the middle school play, which is just huge because he wanted to have a career in theater, but he was too afraid to make the first step. Another woman related to the Courage Wall wrote, I wish I had the courage to start a family. And she came back during the Unity Project and she said, here's my 1-year-old daughter. It was
Oh
actually,
my
it was at the
God.
Soar project. It was last year. Yeah. So she said we wouldn't have started to try to have a family because we were so afraid of how it would change our lives. And here she is. Thank you. Like, wow,
Oh,
I made a family.
that is beautiful. That
Yeah.
is beautiful. So you have to feel like, I mean, it's almost destiny, right? That you're doing these things that you're doing because you are bringing people together and changing lives as a result of it. And I think the beautiful thing that I'm hearing about this is that each one of these projects continues on. It's like the ripple effect where, other installations of this project are happening. Every time somebody hires you to come and do it for their conference, you're impacting lives for that conference and bringing people together. And did you ever fathom with the first one? Did you ever fathom that you would have like all of these different versions of this like around different concepts and that they would be spreading so far?
No, I thought it was just going to be a little thing that I did. I didn't know that there would be a
Oh,
series of them. Um, no, I had no idea. But now I do. And so now what I try to do is capture the process along the way, create a manual so that people can do these at other places. And I'm starting to market them to conferences and associations. I took the Soar project, which I didn't talk about,
yeah.
but we have a big rock. And on the rock, we write a burden that we're ready to let go of. And then once we're ready to let go of the rock, we lay it down and we hang a brightly colored origami bird to symbolize our lightness and freedom.
Mm.
And I went to a leadership conference of a bunch of leadership coaches. And I thought maybe people have worked on themselves so much that they won't have burdens to lay down. And they did. So even leadership coaches who have worked on themselves a lot do. And this woman came up to me after and she said, I just wanted to share my rock with you. And she was this beautiful young woman. And her rock said that she wanted to lay down was believing I'm garbage.
Mm.
And we sat there and we held the rock together and we just cried. And she told me the story about how her father used to tell her all the time, you're garbage, you're garbage, you're garbage. You're never going to amount to anything. And she had been holding on to that and believing that. And it was a moment for her that I think was a transformational moment. She said it was a transformational moment and she's written me since and said that it was such a gift to be able to lay down that rock that day.
Wow. It makes me want to cry. I mean, like, I feel like I'm getting too emotional, like talking about this. It's incredible. So what are you working on now? How do you go through the process? How, even emotionally, how do you go through this process of creating something? You're watching the culmination of everything with Sanctuary, with this latest project. You're watching this come together. This has to be sort of, I don't know, like I feel like as we're approaching the weekend, as we're approaching, everything, like all of this stuff going up in flames, like what happens after that? How do you go through something where it's like, I don't know, is it grieving? Is it excitement? Do you already know what you're going to do next? Like, I mean, what even do you go through?
I have a big project that I really want to do, but it's going to mean about $1 million that I need to raise. So it's different. It's on a bigger scale. It's a global project. And so that's something that I'm working on next. But there's definitely that moment where it's one of my babies and I decide it's time for it to come down. And it's a practice in letting go. Wow. I do yoga every day. I practice letting go in lots of different ways. And I think it's important for life and for, just having inner peace. And so it's a practice for me in letting go and saying, it's okay. It was there for a moment. It helped some people and that iteration of it is gone. And may I be blessed with the next one.
Wow. Kim, I see. She's like, this is awesome, but I have to pop off. Thanks for the inspiration. And Anne saying, thank you for bringing Nancy to us. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. This is intense. It's so amazing, you know? I mean, I really think so. So what I want to do is I want to make sure people are able to find out more information, find out how to engage with you. If anybody's watching this or listening to this and you're like, I've got that $1 million you need to make this project happen, like how should people reach out to you? Where should they go for more information? Where should they look for inspiration or to keep up with your projects?
Yeah, so there are a couple places. I have a website at nancybelmont.com. So that's a good place to go to see my whole body of work and see what I'm working on. You can see all the projects there. There's a little summary video there that you can check out if you want to see that. And then the other place to go for inspiration is We Live Big on Facebook and Instagram, but especially Facebook. I have a weekly live broadcast on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock that is called We Live Big Wednesdays. And every week I give a challenge for people to step out of their comfort zone and flex their courage muscles. And I love to see people live there. And so it's just a different challenge every week. Sometimes it's something fun, sometimes it's something serious. But it's just something inspired by my life and something that I'm going through at the moment. And I share it with people and invite them to take part.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. I know that you've mentioned We Live Big Wednesdays, but I need to set it up so I get notifications. I'm going to immediately, I wrote it down here. I'm going to go immediately over there because I want to challenge myself. I think that there was a lot that you said today that I think that I need to personally think about and dig into a little bit deeper. And so, personally, thank you for joining me today, Nancy.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Professionally, like I feel like on behalf of Association Chat and the Association of Meetings Industries, like thank you so much for joining all of us and for sharing your experience and insight. And for all of you who are watching, please, 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 follow Nancy's work, get in contact with her. She's very approachable, excellent person to know. And until next time, everyone, keep asking questions to learn every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.